Hi. I wanted to come on and talk a little bit about something that actually bothers me a lot and is trending in the right direction, but is still something that is far enough away that it scares me a bit. Um, and that is how, and I think in part it has to do with trauma culture, but I don't want to completely like it. It's too nuanced and complex to just think that any one thing is responsible for this, but it is our loss of ability to tolerate discomfort, right? And I'm going to give two very specific examples because if you want to live as a principled person who has values, and if those values include any of these: integrity, dignity, honor, courage, you have to be able to handle discomfort. And the discomfort you have to be able to handle are things like guilt, shame, and grief. You have to process your grief. You have to move through it. I'm not going to say that makes it go away, but you have to keep moving. You have to keep moving. Um, there's 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 stages and steps. Keep moving through them. And if you catch yourself not moving, and this is true for anything, if you catch yourself not moving for too long, move. But I want to talk about guilt and shame. If you talk about living in alignment and seeking resonance, you have to define your values and use those as a compass. They are your guiding principles. Guiding principles. The principles you live by. And all angels are in all of our spiritualities that mention angels are examples of pure principle in order to serve as maps that we can follow, right? So we know what they look like. We have a slew of storybook characters that show us what these different virtues look like. We have to use those virtues in order to discern what is for us and not for us, which means we have to come up against resistance and challenge and to be able to move through it. And the way we move through that and determine and discern what is for us and not for us is if it causes guilt and shame in us. It is an assessment that we use for ourselves. I do not have any right to assign guilt or shame to another person. However, if I value honesty and I lie, I should hold myself accountable through a feeling of guilt and shame for my behavior. Right? Shame is something that I attribute, like there's knowledge, right? I knew what I was doing going into it. And still, like, to stick with the honesty, I knew that I was going to have negative consequences for lying. I'm violating myself in lying, and I chose to do it anyway. That to me is shame. Guilt is I did this thing as a reaction because I couldn't regulate my system well and reacted instead of responded in a way that was based on past conditioning and programming that I didn't choose in the moment, that, and I feel guilty for that. But both of those are in the moment, quick, they're done, they hit, you feel it, you correct. You immediately go, oh, whoa, that came out of someone I am not anymore or ever. Here is the correct information. Immediate. But they're supposed to be there. They're not supposed to become fixed states of being in repeated narratives that we say over and over. It is a one and done and move on thing. It is a I felt it, that I behaved in a way that was out of alignment with my values. I felt it because I proceeded forward and I touched that electric fence. It zapped me and I went, oh, not that direction, this way. We aren't supposed to hold on to the fence and keep letting it zap us. And that's what most of us are doing, right? Like we get into these fixed states in an effort to protect ourselves from discomfort. And then it solidifies us into a state of discomfort, right? Because if you have no ability to handle discomfort in a world that is all about energy and frequency and waves, and you're not prepared for the current, and that's why you have a hard time. You know, anybody who is going to get on a river recreationally knows that they need to know the behavior of the current that they're in and the land that is shaping that current, right? Is it wide open land? The current of the river is probably going to be slow. Is it going through a narrow canyon pass? Compression? The current's probably going to be hard and tight, right? We live in this. But in order to handle expansion, we also have to handle compression. You know, we are the compression point of awareness. Awareness is the broad field of our sensory data. And our body takes in a lot of data. That is awareness. Attention is our selecting from that field, from our sensory data, what is novel, what is new, what is out of alignment, what doesn't fit what is expected, right? What caused a spike? And that spike is one end of the wave, right? High and low. So it's detecting the spikes. But we don't live there. We fluidly transition flew. What we're trying to do is learn how to return to center by choice. When things get us out of alignment, we're learning how to ride the current. But we have to get to a point where we can talk about guilt and shame and have them and recognize the tool that they are and use them to guide our behavior, or we're going to continue to see the mass level of ignorant immaturity that we have. And that's the only problem that we have, is a mass collective of adults running around still fighting for their childhood. Peter Pan syndrome. Because we weren't shown any better. Because our parents weren't shown any better, and their parents, like, we're all doing the best we can. But we have a really big problem with maturing. Because maturation requires the ability to carry discomfort. Maturity requires knowing how to go through challenge and adversity without being consumed by it. But you have to go through it in order to learn not to be consumed by it. We are here to learn discernment in order to know the difference and act in accordance with honesty or deception, valor or cowardice, integrity or malice, whatever the opposite of integrity is. You know where I'm going with this. Like, there are choice points on a value system, and there's two options every time, and we have to have the negative in order to understand how to choose, right? They're like bumpers on the bowling lane. We're just supposed to touch and go, like, oh, that sucked, I don't want to be there, I'm going to get back in alignment. That's it. But instead, we live in these states, we make them states, and we perpetuate exactly what we're trying to avoid, right? Because we can't avoid consequence. It's against the laws of nature that you can act a fool and not run into consequences. And yet we have a whole collection of people out there who think that the perfect society is one that has no discomfort. There's no growth that way. And I'm going to tell you right now, that would make me incredibly bored. But we have to be more resilient. We have to get back to a point where we can handle discomfort with maturity and discernment. And we're not there yet, but we're starting to turn that way. Like, but it's time. It's time. Your truth has been talking to you, calling you. It's been speaking inside you, making you uncomfortable, causing disturbances in your environment around you in order to make you move. And instead, we're trying to cling to this childlike state. And our inner child causes a lot of freaking problems. Children lie. Teenagers rebel. It's time for us to be the adult selves. Our future self isn't somewhere down the road. It's here right now. We are it. Time we start living with love letters for the self that's going to come down the pipe, not living trying to clean up after the one that's already gone. It doesn't exist anymore. Right? Like, what are we going to get back from our child? It's something that exists solely inside of us now. We are here. This. And I am not going to live today in atonement or trying to get affection and attention back from a state that no longer exists. I'm going to meet this moment here now, and I'm going to meet it with the knowing that however I choose to do so makes things better or worse for a me down the road that I love, but isn't here yet. And I am responsible to that future generation. I love you. Have a good day.